Good morning, children, and Sairam. So today I welcome you all in geography session. In this video, we will continue geography third chapter, Our Changing Earth, and this is part 2. Now just tell me, children, do you remember what we have learned in the part 1 of this chapter? In part 1, we discussed about the endogenic force. Like as I told you, the movement of the earth are divided on the basis of force. Now there are two forces. First one is the endogenic force, right? And second one is the exogenic force. So about endogenic force, we already discussed in part 1. In this video or in this part, we discussed about the exogenic force. But before moving further, let's take a quick recap about the endogenic force. Endogenic force, endo means inside, the force which act inside or interior of the earth. It's called the endogenic force. Now endogenic force basically sometimes produce sudden movements and sometimes produce slow movement. So the sudden movement leading earthquake, volcanoes, and that causes the mass destruction on the surface of the earth. Is it clear? Okay, now just move on to the exogenic force. Exo means outside. Exo means outside and genic means origin. The force which work on or above the earth's surface are called the exogenic force. Exogenic refers to the external process phenomena, right, that occur on or above the earth's surface. Now basically there are two exogenic processes. First one is weathering and second one is erosion, right? First one is weathering and second one is erosion. As you know that, children, the surface of the earth is continuously undergoing changes. So the landscape is also continuously wearing away by the two processes. First process is weathering and the second process is erosion. They both are the exogenic process. Okay, now let's read about one by one. First, what is weathering? What is weathering? Weathering is the breaking up of the rocks on the earth's surface by the action of rainwater, extreme temperature, or we can say biological activity, but it does not involve the removal of the soil particles. Even weathering involve no moving agent of the transport, right? Weathering basically involve no moving agent of the transport. So what is weathering? Weathering is the breaking up of the rocks on the earth's surface. This process is called the weathering. Second is the erosion. Erosion Erosion is the process by which soil and rock particles wearing away or moved elsewhere or transported by the different agents. Different agents, for example, wind, water, and ice. Right? So, erosion is the removal of solids, sediments, soil, rock, and other particles in the natural environment, and it usually occurs due to the transport or the different agents by the wind, water, and ice. Right? So basically, weathering and erosion are the two important exogenic forces. Now all the eroded material carried by or transported by the same cheese is wind, water and ice. Now this process like erosion and deposition, they create different landforms on the earth's surface, right? This process, that means the erosion then deposition, erosion, transported and depositions, they create different landforms on the earth's surface. So now let's understand how all these different agents, that means the wind, water, ice and waves, how they just form different features on the earth surface. So let's start with the first, work of river, right? Let's start with the first, work of river. So there are many features formed or made by the rivers. Basically, children, river are the most important agent of degradation, or we can say the work of river is based on the two factors. First is volume of water. The work of water depend on first factor, volume of water, and the second one is the slope of the sea slope of the seabed. First one is volume of the water, and second one is the slope of the seabed. So as you know that, like when the rivers flow through the mountainous regions, so at that time it has a great erosive power. So a common feature it's formed over there, like for example gorges, waterfall they formed, meanders, oxbow lake, floodplain, levees, and last one is the delta. Now let's understand with the help of the diagram first. Features made by the rivers. Basically, rivers has three courses. First is the upper course, second one is the middle course, and the third one is the lower course. So when the rivers like originated from top of the mountain, right? So as the river flow through the mountainous region, so at that time river had a great erosive power, and when it falls down, so first common features they formed. First one is the eye shaped valleys, gorges they form over there, waterfall also form, right? So in upper course, when the rivers flow through the mountainous regions, they formed eye shaped valley, then gorges and waterfall. Then second thing is when the river enter into the plain region, that means in the middle course, right? As the river enter into the plain region, that means in middle course, so here they formed meander feature, right? In middle course they formed meander feature. Then when river enter into the lower course, that means in this course, so here they form oxbow lake and delta. Is it clear? Upper course, basically first when the rivers flow through the mountainous regions, so in this course they just form common features like the eye-shaped valleys, gorges and waterfall. In middle course they just form like meander, and in third course they just form oxbow lake and delta. Now let's understand one by one all these features. So waterfall. So as I said, when the rivers flow through the mountainous region, so at that time it has a great erosive power. So first they formed eye-shaped valleys and deep steep sided valley. It's called the gorges. And when the rivers tumbles at the deep angles over the very hard rocks, so at that time they just fall a waterfall, where the water plunges down from the great height. A waterfall is a place where flowing water rapidly drops in elevation as it flows over the steep region or a cliff. So as you know that like a waterfall has a great value as it helps in generating hydroelectricity. Okay, now the next feature is meanders. Meanders basically, as the river enter into the plain, that means in middle course, so it forms large curves and bends like this, right? So this is called meander. Is it clear? When as the rivers enter into the plain regions, so it forms large bends, curves or loops are called the meanders. Now due to the continuous erosion and depositions along the side of the meanders loop, so the end of this meander loop become closer and closer, and in due course the meander loop, the end of the meanders cut off from the main river like this. cut off from the main rivers and they just form cut off lake. And one of the example of cut off lake is the Oxbow Lake. Right? How Oxbow Lake? Basically, an Oxbow Lake is a U-shaped body of the water formed when a wide meander from the main stem of a river is cut off to create a lake. And this landform is called an Oxbow Lake for the distinctive curved shape that result from this process. Is it clear? Due to the continuous erosion and deposition along the side of the meanders, so the end of the meanders come closer and closer. So in due course, the end of the meanders loops cut off from the main river and they formed cut off lake, and this landform is also called an Oxbow Lake. Right? Like this. This is the example of cut off lake. Work of wave can be best seen in the coastal areas. Now let's see the features formed by the sea waves. Have you ever seen? Basically, there are many features formed by the waves, like the sea caves, sea arches, stacks, stumps. Right? Now let's understand how all these features formed. First one is the sea caves. Basically, in areas where the waves first strike the rocky coast, so an almost vertical wall of rocks formed by the erosive action of waves, and this they just form sea caves. Sea caves, also known as the littoral cave, is a type of cave formed primarily by the wave action of the sea, and the primary process involved is erosion. Is it clear? So this is sea cave. Now second one is the sea arches. So when the sea waves continuously strike at the rock, right? When the sea waves continuously strike at the rocks, so crack develop, and which gradually the crack became wider and larger, and they just create hollow in the rock. And over the period of time, only the roof remained, giving the rise of the feature of sea arches. Sea arches, that means when the sea caves become bigger and bigger, only the roof of the caves remain. Then they just form sea arches. Right? Now the next feature is the stack. Basically, as the erosion continues, so roof to collapse, leaving only the walls. Right? Stack basically as the erosion continues, right? As the erosion continues, so the roof also to collapsed, only the leaving the two walls. So this feature is called the stack, and which further eroded, and they just form stumps. Right? So is it clear? All the features formed by the sea waves, sea caves, arches, stack, and the stump. So basically, starting with the first, when the sea waves strike at the rocky coast, right? So an almost in vertical walls of the rocks formed by the waves, this is called the sea caves. And then sea waves continuously strike at the rockies, so they just creating first crack, and now this crack gradually and slowly become wider and the larger, and they just create hollow on the rocks. This is called the sea arches. Right? Next one is the as the erosion continues, so roof to collapse, only the walls are the left. So this is stack, and now this stack or this wall is further eroded and they just form a stump. Is it clear? Now the next one is work of ice. Now let's see the feature of ice. Glaciers, moraines. Basically, first understand what are glaciers. Now just tell me, children, what are glaciers? Glaciers are rivers of ice. Right? Glaciers are rivers of ice. Even glaciers too eroded, deposit, and transported all the eroded material. Glaciers can modify, even completely change the landform. So the first, the erosion work of ice resulting the formation of U-shaped valleys, right? Which are deep and have steep sided. The next one is as the ice melt, so they just get filled up with the waters and they just form beautiful lakes in the mountains. Next is the glaciers moraines. Basically, when the ice melt from the mountain, so it carries along with it small and big rocks, sand and slates, right? All this material they deposit due to the slow movement of the glacier. So this deposit are called the glacier moraines, right? So all these features, these are the features formed by the ice. Now the next one is the work of wind. So basically, work of wind can be best seen in the desert region. So as I said, wind action can be best seen in the desert region. Okay, now just tell me children, have you ever visited a desert? Basically in desert you can see rocks in the shape of mushroom, like this, right? In desert you can see the rocks in the shape of mushrooms, commonly called mushroom rock, right? Okay, now let's see the features of wind. So basically features like mushroom rocks, sand dunes, are formed by the action of wind. Now let's understand all the features of the all the features formed by the wind. First one is the mushroom rock. So as I said, basically in desert you can see the rocks in the shape of mushroom like this, commonly called mushroom rocks. Now how mushroom rocks are formed? Basically in desert region a strong wind eroded. This is the base and this is the top of the rock. So in the desert areas, a strong wind eroded at the base is faster than the top, right? Base faster than the top. So gradually the base of the rock the base of the rocks is eroded from all the sides and leaving a narrower base as compared to the top. So the rock resembles a mushroom and such rocks are called the mushroom rocks. And one more thing, this type of rock most commonly found in the Sahara Desert, right? Where? In Africa, that means in Sahara Desert. So an active agent of erosion and deposition in the desert is wind, right? In desert, rocks in the shape of mushroom, commonly called mushroom rock. Now the next feature is sand dunes. Okay, now first of all, as you know that as the wind blow with a great velocity, so it carries sand particles along with it, right? When its speed decrease, so it drop and deposit sand low hills like structure, and this is called sand dunes. So sand dunes basically is the hill of sands. Sand dunes basically are the hill of sands, and basically this type of a feature most commonly found in the desert region. So when the wind blows, it lifts and transports sand from one place to another. When it stops blowing, the sand falls and get deposited in low hill-like structure called the sand dunes. So sand dunes basically are the hill of sands, and this most commonly found in the desert. Now the second thing is the crescent shape like this. The crescent shape sand dunes are called Barchin, right? Now next feature is the Lewis. Basically when the wind carry dust particle the parts of the dust which is very light in weight. So the wind carry this dust particles over a very long distance or very far from the areas, and such dust particles deposited in the large area, it is called loess. Now the extensive loess can be found in China, Pampas region of Argentina, and it is also found in Mississippi region of USA. So here your geography third chapter also completed. I hope you can understood all this topic. Now move on to the quiz time. So first question is, deposition of sand in a low hill like structure is known as a dash. Options are, first one is the glacier, sand winds, third option is hill, and the fourth option is desert. Now just tell me, the deposition of sand in a low hill like structure is known as, yes, option B, sand winds, right? Sand winds basically is a hill of sand. Next is true false. Wearing away of the land by different agents like water, wind and ice. So this process is called erosion. True or false? It's true, right? Next is sea caves. Sea caves become bigger and only the roof remains, forming the sea arches. Now this statement is true or false? It's also true. Now the next one is the glaciers moraine. Glacier moraine is a depositional features of glacier. It is true or false? It is also true. Now the fifth one is, river is an agent of erosion and deposition in the desert. Now this statement is true or false? River is an agent of erosion and deposition in the desert region? No. Answer is false. Now the next is sixth. The processes of dash and dash create different landform on the earth's surface. So basically there are two processes. First one is erosion and the second one is the deposition. The process of erosion and deposition create different landforms on the earth's surface. Now seventh, next one is deposition of layers of fine soil along the banks of rivers form dash. Deposition of layers of fine soil along the banks of rivers, they just form flood plains, right? Now it's over. Thank you children. Have a nice day.